What if there was a way of turning your lyrics into song ideas every time instead of struggling until the inspiration wears off, and then the song that could have been never gets written, adding to all the other songs that you could have written but didn't, and then resulting in you not reaching your full songwriting potential and the world missing out on your music? It'd be nice to have a simple system to fix this, yeah? And the good news is that there is a way, and I'm going to show you 3 steps to do it, which is the result of thousands of hours of songwriting. So in this video, I'm going to tell you what it is and how anyone can use it, and the number 1 tip to effectively put your lyrics into a song. So what is the importance? Well, the more you do this, the better you get at it, and then the easier it becomes. The easier it becomes, the faster you can turn your lyrics into songs. And this results in a virtuous cycle where you can write more songs faster and more easily. So a bit of background, in my last video I was going through some lyric techniques and I wrote a chorus idea that stuck with me, and I decided to develop to show you today and demonstrate how this system works. I also had the Rolling Stones in mind when I wrote the lyrics, so we'll also look at a song of theirs to relate back to this 3-step system. So a quick note, the first 2 steps can be done in any order, they work together, and one order is not better than the other, it's very situation specific. Sometimes the steps are even done at the same time, all 3 steps. It just depends how advanced you are and how used to using this technique you are. But they do all need to be completed for you to end up with a good finished song idea. So step 1, find the music. Question for you, what is the number 1 most important thing to keep in mind when we're putting our lyrics to music? In one word, it is context. That is an angle to come from. So if your lyrics are a foot, then the music is the shoe that the foot goes into. But you have to consider the environment you're going to be walking in. You do not want to be going to a funeral in your frog wellies, unless you do, in which case you obviously know more than me about the situation. But the lyrics will dictate the emotional environment and setting in which the music is going to evolve into. Be it uplifting emotionally, melancholy, euphoric, rebellious, etc. Now, side note, music isn't always in context, as you probably know. Like say that Kill Bill whistle song, that it's like a happy tune. The whistle itself is quite a happy little melody, but it's got a very, very sort of sinister undertone. It sounds unsettled, like something's about to go wrong. And in doing that, it actually creates a more scary and freaky kind of overall mood than if they'd have just gone, right, minor chords and we're going to write a scary theme song. It's actually kind of creepier that it's got this kind of sort of twisted, happy sound about it. So in that sense, the melody being out of context with the music actually makes for a more powerful final effect. And the same goes with lyrics and music. You don't have to match the mood of the music to the lyrics if you don't want to. In some instances, it might be better not to. You could write a song about getting revenge on someone to the tune of Happy Birthday if you wanted to. But I would say that is the exception, not the rule. And most of the time, your song will be stronger and more effective if the music is in context and reflects the emotional content of the lyrics. So what things do we need to take into consideration while we are finding a musical fit for the lyrics? Well, there's a few variables that we want to keep in mind while we're doing this. So the first one is vibe and mood. You know, what do you want the listener to feel? The tempo, is it fast, slow? The groove, is it a straight beat or does it have a shuffle to it? And what is the energy? You know, is it an explosive energy? Is it a kind of smouldering coal? How do you want to express the energy? How do you want the energy to be received? And these are considerations that you can think about beforehand and in real time while you are developing the song. So if we look at Angie by the Rolling Stones and go through the lyrics and try and think about the kind of musical environment you'll be creating to fit the context of the lyrics. So Angie, Angie, where will those clouds disappear? Angie, Angie, where will it lead us from here? With no loving in our souls and no money in our coats, you can't say we're satisfied. Angie, Angie, you can't say we never tried. Angie, you're beautiful, yeah, but ain't it time we said goodbye? So, the context. They're not having a great time, obviously. Financially poor. The romance has died. They're negotiating the end of the relationship. So what kind of considerations would go into writing the music to fit those lyrics? Well, you'd think a slower tempo. It's quite a raw, sad song with a sense of melancholy, so maybe minor key and minor chords. But there's also a bit of a sense of hope for the future in there, because Mick Jagger says, ain't it great to be alive? And other such things. So it's a kind of like, oh, it sucks now, but it's going to be good later on. We've got to look at the big picture kind of thing. So you could think about that in terms of the music. How could you express that musically as well? The energy on the whole you'd think is sort of a lower energy and more of a contained kind of feel to it. So with that being said, what would Angie sound like out of context, where we're just not paying any attention to the emotional content in the lyrics? Angie, Angie, when will those clouds disappear? Angie, Angie, where will it lead us from here? With no loving in our souls and no money in our throats, we can't say we're satisfied. Angie, you can't say that we never tried. Obviously, we know how good the final song actually is and how much more powerful it is than what I just wrote. And part of the reason is because they've really dug into the emotions that the lyrics are trying to elicit, and expressed them musically in a really powerful way through some very interesting ideas, aside from the basic ones of using the minor key, minor chords, and changes that kind of sound a little bit more melancholy and lamenting. And there's a few other clever things they've done, but if I play the in context version, then I'll explain what I mean with these little nuances. So, Angie, Angie, well, when these clouds all disappear, Angie, Angie, where will it lead us from here? With no loving in our souls and no money in our coats, you can't say we're satisfied. Angie, you're beautiful, yeah. Ain't it time we say goodbye? So a couple of cool things they've done there. One is they've really driven the mood home with the overall pacing of the song, but also there's a clever use of the E7 blue note there when he says Angie for the second time. Angie, Angie. And obviously it's called a blue note for a reason, because it says something very distinctive. It's kind of cool, but it's kind of slightly melancholic as well. And then when I said about it having an upward kind of tilt to the mood, when it, there's kind of a sense of hope in the song, is when he says, ain't it great to be alive? So it's this sus4 on the F that he adds in. You wouldn't associate that with a sad, melancholy song. If anything, I think it's quite triumphant sounding. So when he says, ain't it great to be alive, later on in the song, ain't it great to be alive? That's quite clever how they've thrown that little upward emotional lift in there to kind of give the song more detail and more emotional power, really. Obviously, that is much more effective than the version I did, partly because the Rolling Stones wrote it, but partly because the music just fits with the lyrics better. None of this advice is like set in stone. There's no stone tablets that say you must always write in context. You know, we're making art here, and at the end of the day, if we box ourselves in with too many limitations, we're going to sound like everybody else. And you know, you've got to break the mold sometimes. So these are guidelines. So for my song, Cast a Net, it was called, this chorus idea: cast a net and try to find it, cast a net and look inside, cast a net only to see that you can't cast a net on me. And what we're looking at is a technique, I think it was called anaphora or antimetabole, and it was about the idea of repetition, like cast a net, cast a net, cast a net, and the power that comes with repetition. So given what we just discussed, how did I approach the song? Well, when I wrote the lyric, I kind of thought of the Rolling Stones. I thought that could fit into one of their higher energy songs. So more up tempo, upbeat in mood, defiant, optimistic, and higher energy. So the very rough idea that I had to start with for the chords were but obviously that's just some chords. So what we need to do now is to go to step 2, which is vocalize. Now this means to find a vocal melody where you can bring the lyrics and the music together through the melody that goes over the chords. Now step 1 and 2 can be done simultaneously, which is actually the way I wrote this, although I did kind of come up with the chords first, but then I started to develop the melody over the top of it while I was writing them. And maybe you had a cool melody in mind beforehand, at which point you're then writing the chords to fit a predetermined melody, which is also fine. Now my vocal melody came quite quickly, and it's only a rough sketch, but this is what I had. Cast a net and try to find it, cast a net and look inside, cast a net only to see that you can't cast a net on me. So there I've got a rough idea for a song, but it's not a completed song. So I've got to take this to the next step, which is how can I make it better, and also how can I not ruin it and make it worse. So this is where we look at step number 3, which is develop and refine the song. This involves 2 major skills. Skill number 1 is to recognize what is and is not working, and then knowing what to change and what to leave in, and then how to change the thing that you've decided to change and what to replace it with. And that means to tweak and listen in real time as the song grows and evolves and develops, while staying in a creative state of mind. So I have done that with this idea, cast a net, and the original essence of the song idea still remains in place, but I've added some changes in. So I added a B minor in to create some variation and some movement in the harmony. I extended the chorus idea and ended up changing the melody over the top a little bit, and I found a more extended resolution that kind of drags the idea out on in a good way. And then I changed the vocal melody as well to create some variation, and then a verse section which was, it resolved to the D, so I thought, well, I'll write the verse in D then, and ended up with like a riff-tastic idea. I thought, I'll add a riffy vibe to it to make it more like rock and roll, Rolling Stones kind of thing. Riff-tastic is a real word, by the way. I didn't just make it up. And then the verse begins immediately after the chorus, and then it kind of cycles around, so it keeps the idea lean in the sense that there's not a big drag between the chorus and the verse. So see how obvious or not these little developments I've made are, and what you think of this next idea, this next evolution of the idea. You made it all alone, made it all alone. Sweet, sweet loving, you can make it on yourself. Cast a net and try to find it. Cast a net and you will see. Na, 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 na. You can't cast a net on me. You can't cast a net on me. You can't cast a net on me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So you can hear the essence of the main idea is still in place, just with some minor alterations to make for a more filled out song idea, a more developed one. So all this is to say that small changes can make a big difference. You've got the essence of the song idea, but it's a bit bare bones until you start to refine it a little bit. But those little changes have a lot of power in them. So you want to focus on making small changes to make a big difference, but while not getting lost in hyper-focusing on changing details for the sake of changing things, because then that can overcomplicate a song and it can kind of lose its direction. So it's about understanding and respecting the idea of having nuance, which is making small, subtle changes. But really, with this technique, you want to be maintaining your overall song's direction of that original idea that inspired you to develop the song in the first place, and to keep walking down through the steps. And yeah, it's not about showing off and being fancy. You got to keep the listener in mind and consider their experience of hearing the song, and use the principles in the right way, which is to make an idea that's catchy and memorable and as immediate as possible as well, if you're going for kind of a pop ethos. So yeah, take your lyrics, develop a song idea using these 3 steps, and get to the point that I'm at with an idea, and then you'll be ready to complete the song by maybe putting in an intro, maybe a middle 8, maybe a bridge, polishing the lyrics, finishing them off, rounding the song out, and then you could potentially record it with some extra parts, bass lines, guitar, backing vocals, who knows what. But I'm going to be doing that in a future video with this song, so we can go through the process then. But for now, that's me, that's the system. Take your lyrics and put them in a song. See you in the next one. Cheers.